Hello, hello, hello. Hi, Nadine.
Long time no see.
How are you?
I am good. It is a chilly but beautiful day outside. There's a lot of bright light in the sky. So,
I'm enjoying these moments where I'm not freezing and I'm not dealing with snow, but I can wear my hoodies and my jackets and my coat, my whatever, my layers, without feeling the need of having a coat. So
uh,
I can make stylish decisions, which I don't anyway, but I can do it.
no, you do. You do. You do pretty good.
So, hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Askable Adults Live, the show where we talk all about sex ed, community, and community resources that seek to keep families together. My name is Jonathan Rodriguez. I use he, him, and el pronouns, and I'm the Youth and Health Resource Center coordinator for Berks Matters. And with me,
My name is Nadine. I use they and their pronouns, and I am the community liaison with Berks Teens Matters.
and today we have an awesome guest. But before actually starting with the conversation, we always like to start with our usual acknowledgments and recognitions, and that is that Black Lives Matter today and always. There's so much that needs to be
Yes.
done to
Yes.
actually having people shout and fight for a more
Just.
just and like liberated society where everyone is hi Marie, everyone is lives in justice and in liberation. Today we welcome one recurring guest. I
Recurring guest?
It's been pretty recurring, which is pretty awesome. And we welcome her in a new role. So
Right. She has a
joining us,
new identity.
I know. So we're gonna discover it together. And joining us today, give it up for the executive director of Family Promise of Berks County, Bethany Bower.
Where have I heard that
Woo!
name before? Oh, it's her.
Fancy seeing you here.
Hi, Bethany. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Stop.
Thanks for
How couldn't
joining.
we? How couldn't
Yes.
we? And first of all, I think Nadine and confirm this. Is this the first time that we've had an executive director with us here in the show?
Oh, I think so. I think we've
Oh,
never had an executive director before. What does an executive director even do?
I want to
I don't even know.
know. You just show up.
I show up when I'm invited and asked, and here I am.
Awesome. Well, it's been a couple of months. Let's
It's
get
been
the elephant out of the room. You hook upon. Yeah. It's been four. Oh my God, 4 months. So, going from being a project manager to now being the executive director for an organization. Could you tell us a little bit about how the process has been doing that transition?
We have a half an hour to talk, right? No. It has been a very humbling experience. It has also been a very stressful experience, which I knew, of course, was going to happen. I have new and different responsibilities. And also just focusing on a different social problem, right? While we're all connected, it's just different. And so the last 4 months have just been a lot of learning not only the agency and the organizations and our programming, but also just learning local, federal policies around housing and support for folks experiencing homelessness. So it's just been a lot. I feel like I might have been here for 12 months versus 4. So
Mm.
it's ironic to me that it's only been 4 months, but it has all in all been a very humbling experience. I'm just so grateful to still be, still have my connections with wonderful people like both of you. And, just to still be a part of this community I'm just honored to be here.
And we're so happy that you're really just right down the street.
Literally.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty
Not
much.
that we see you very much, but we know that you're there. We both walk past your house every day. I mean, not your house, your office. Sorry.
It's okay. I feel like it's my second house sometimes.
Well, and we can totally talk a little bit about that, because there's a sense maybe or like a feeling of a home at Family Promise, but we're gonna be talking about that in a little bit. Well, Family Promise is really lucky to have you. Let's start with that. Any organization that has the privilege to having you as a partner, as a volunteer, just as a person involved is really lucky to have you. And since we've been mentioning your organization, let's shift a little bit or conversation to it. So, Family Promise is a nonprofit organization that has been around since the 80s and that aims to help families experiencing homelessness and low income families to achieve sustainable independence through a community based response. It's also a nationwide organization. And here in Berks County, we have a chapter. Can we call it a chapter? In which is Family Promise of Berks County, in which is the affiliate that Bethany directs. So it's a lot.
It's a lot.
And it's so different because, of course, Berks Teens Matters is only based in one in this county. We have a couple of partners, but it's based here. But now you're also part of a network from the same kind of like the same organization.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So
yeah, imagine that. Yeah. And we're really eager to hear you talk about the services that Family Promise offers. But before we get into all of that, there are some words that we're throwing around like homeless and homelessness. And I think for a lot of people that conjures up these certain images in most people's minds of what a homeless person looks like, what it means to be homeless. And I think that those images are probably pretty limiting to our understanding of what homelessness is. So when we say that Family Promise aims to help families experiencing homelessness and low-income families, what is your definition of homelessness? What does that mean?
So since I've been here, I told you I've been learning a lot, and I've been really straddling two definitions, if you will. HUD's definition of homelessness is also different from what the McKinney-Vento Act says. So, for example, the McKinney-Vento Act is a federal act that gives us definitions of homelessness for young people. So that, by their definition, it's really anybody who is missing like a fixed or regular or adequate overnight or nighttime residence. And I appreciate you, Nadine, mentioning that we get these images in our head, right? Because not only does general society get these ideas about what definitions are of homelessness, but when we're reaching out to folks in the community that could potentially benefit from our services, that stands as a barrier itself, right? Mm-hmm. If we're going out to groups of young people and we say, hi, all young people that are homeless, mm-hmm. there might not be a connection there, right? And so when we think about homelessness, besides it being, missing that regular, adequate overnight residence, homelessness could mean, of course, somebody sleeping on the street or living in tent city or living in their car, but someone who is experiencing homelessness could also mean that they're doubling up with another family. It could mean that they're staying on the couch or a floor of a friend or a family member. It could also mean that they're staying in a hotel or a campground. So it can vary. As a matter of fact, we have volunteers that are associated with Family Promise, and even young people that we talk to that, when we put that definition out there, oftentimes people would be like, wait a minute, I have experienced homelessness, right? Or I am currently experiencing homelessness. And then there's that missed support, right? Or that missed, menu of services, if you will, for them. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of what I think about when I think about the definition of homelessness.
That's very helpful, because it explains that it's not necessarily that person living in a tent or living on the sidewalk or something like that. That there's a lot of different circumstances we can be in and still really be homeless if we look hard at what our situation is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's good to know. So,
and we're all so close to experiencing homelessness, right? Mm-hmm. I hear people say, and I've definitely thought this in my head too, I could never end up, right? I could never end up in that situation where, I'm experiencing homelessness or housing instability. But I really believe that we're all one paycheck away. We're all, example as well, people who experience natural disasters, if they're displaced from their home and from their permanent residence, that they're now identifying as homelessness. So all of us.
Well, during the COVID pandemic, how many people, end up experiencing homelessness, and even after, because that was the fear. I can't pay. I have that waiver for my landlord, but that's not gonna be forever. So how many people start experiencing homelessness in different ways? That is not necessarily sleeping in the streets. Right. It's different, but it's just not having a stable place to go home. So since we're also, talking about homelessness, then what services does Family Promise of Berks County provide for families experiencing homelessness?
So I really like to describe our programming. We have 3 core services, or 3 core programs, if you will, but I'll just touch on the 2 for right now, because it's my understanding that Berks Teens Matter works with young people.
Sometimes.
So I'll say, okay, sometimes. Well, I will. Sometimes. I'll save the third program, because I think we're going to talk about young people specifically in a little while. But the one of the programs that we do offer is a family shelter program, but it's on a very small scale, if you will. And we are currently one of the only programs in Berks County that really keeps the family unit together. We believe that in order for families to overcome experiences of homelessness, they need to stay together, right? And they need to, maintain their support system. And so we have 2 houses in Berks County where we can offer short-term 60 to 90 days shelter services for families, up to 5 families at a time. And while they're there, they're working towards education and or employment, and they're working towards permanent stability, all while receiving regular case management with one of our workers. Another program that we offer is rent and utilities assistance. So if somebody is behind on their rent, or if they're behind in their utilities, and they qualify based on their income, then we can, help them with those arrears. That's called what we call homeless prevention. And then we also offer what's called rapid rehousing. So if somebody is experiencing homelessness, then we could help them, for example, with first month's rent and security deposit. For those of you listening, though, I do want to clarify that our rent and utilities assistance, the bulk of the funding that we receive is through the county. And so the funding that we have to offer is for families who are residing outside of the city limits. If a family is looking for, because that's where when we want to find affordable housing, right? Sometimes it's in the city. And so If this, if someone, is in need of that rental assistance, while it might not be us, there are other places. Human Relations Commission, for example, can help folks that reside in the city with those services as well. But regardless, we can be that gateway, if you will, and help people find. If we can't help them with the resources, we'll find somebody who can. And then I'll save the third one for later.
And that's where the community-based response comes into play. What exactly? Because I love the trying to achieve a sustainable independence. So it's not like you're staying here and at least you have a roof. It's actually helping them to achieve their independence. You no longer need the shelter because you were able to get back on your feet. But what does community-based response means?
So that's a really great question. And I'm hoping we can also dive a little bit deeper into this because collective impact really resonates here, I think, with community response just a little bit deeper. So historically, Family Promise National was started in collaboration with faith-based organizations and congregations in our own local communities. And so, again, historically, when we operated our family shelter, we were partnering with congregations to essentially shelter families overnight. And so that was a large piece of our community response. And we still, even though in Berks, we're not currently operating with that rotational model because of COVID, we still partner. We still value and sustain those partnerships with those faith-based organizations and congregations. Also through a community response, ideally, and I would like to see us doing more of this, but partnering with landlords and people that have the potential to support families and provide affordable housing, long-term housing. So it can mean a variety of things, but I think mainly about our faith-based partners. In Berks County, we partner also with the Berks Coalition and Homelessness through their coordinated entry programs and coordinated partnerships as well. So it can mean a variety of different things for us.
Go ahead, Nadine.
No, that's just a lot I can understand why that's a lot to wrap your head around, all these different things that can be offered and the circumstances that people can be in. So Family Promise is like a shelter, or it offers shelter to people?
It's a little confusing, right? And I appreciate you all asking this question because I think the best that we can clarify it, the better. We aren't necessarily an emergency shelter, right? This isn't necessarily a place where someone can come and knock on the door and we might have space available overnight. If you come at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, it's not set up that way. And also we don't have a shelter for young people who are experiencing homelessness. And I think that that's also a misconception about Family Promise, if you will, in Berks County. So a little confusing. So I would say we offer shelter services, right? We offer a family short-term shelter if we have the space, but we aren't an emergency shelter that folks might be accustomed to and are more familiar with in this community. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So people have to go through a little bit of a process to come to Family Promise, right? Like you said, they can't just knock on the door at 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
Correct.
Possibly.
Yeah. We have an application process for our family shelter, and especially because, we only offer shelter for up to 5 families at a time. It's just a matter of waiting until we have the space. So yeah, it's a process.
Okay. So you also mentioned youth, yes. And since Berks things matter sometimes, sometimes.
Not exclusively, but sometimes.
Works with you too. Can you tell us about that and the UTurn program?
Mm-hmm. Sure, I'd be happy to. So this is one of the things that drew me to Family Promise several years ago, was just acknowledging, recognizing that young people are incredibly vulnerable, especially when it comes to housing stability and instability. So our UTurn program works with youth between the ages of 17 and 24. Another thing that I really value about our work is that 18 to 24, that's a transitional period, right? So oftentimes that's a time where, believe it or not, parents and caregivers are saying, you're 18, bye, right? Adios. So, or it's the time where young people are aging out of foster care, for example. So I value that about this program for sure. But the UTurn, the majority of our services are through case management. So we can help someone obtain their documents. Oftentimes when you're in a transient period of your life, you misplace your social security card, your driver's license, your birth certificate. So we can help people obtain those documents. We are supported through the United Way to not only provide their support in applying for those documents, but also financially to help them get those documents. And then we also have, through the UTurn program, we also have a 1-year transitional housing program. And the reason why we offer this housing program is because it's to help people build up positive renter history for a year. And it also helps them to save money, right? So they aren't paying market price in our housing program. They're paying a certain percentage of their income. So it allows them to, hopefully supports them to save up money for when, they're done with our program. We do not, however, have an emergency shelter for youth. So typically we would refer young people to Mary Shelter, for example, who are looking for shelter. We do also have a drop-in center, which I think is super cool. A lot of young people who are experiencing homelessness are couch surfing, right? Or they're, doubling up with another young person. And so if we can do anything to help them stay there with a roof over their head, right, but to alleviate some of those utilities that family is experiencing, then we want to do that. So our drop-in center allows them to come here, do their laundry, and then also, get a shower if they need to do that. And we also have a full kitchen. So if they want to cook or they, however they can use that is available for them.
What are the hours for your drop-in center?
Currently, they're Tuesday and Thursday, 3 to 6.
Okay. 3 to 6.
Yeah, but we don't stick to that. We realize that you don't need to, doing your laundry and showering isn't always just between those 3 hours. So we're pretty open.
I think it's very important to talk about the youth specifically, not only because of the risk that they can encounter, but according to the report Missed Opportunities, Homeless Youth in America, 1 in 10 young adults ages 18 to 25, similar to the ages that Family Promise can offer services, and at least 1 in 30 adolescents from 13 to 17 experience some form of homelessness over the course of a year. If they are unaccompanied, they can find it difficult to find a place to live and even someone willing to rent them a room. This is especially hard too for youth who identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, who disproportionately experience homelessness. And they are also a higher risk for family rejection, physical assault, and sexual exploitation in shelters and, of course, on the streets, trauma and mental and substance use disorders. The youth that you receive at Family Promise, or if you've had the chance to talk a little bit more with them, aside from shelter, roof, food, what have they said that they need?
That's a really great question. And I was hoping we would dive into this a little bit because I know that you all happen to operate under the collective impact model. And I really believe that this is related to the work that you all do as well. So, Jonathan, you had mentioned that young people who identify in the queer community are especially at risk. Keep in mind that Black and Brown youth are also at risk. One of the things that I guess I always knew this, but it was validated when I started at Family Promise. Young teen moms, young teen parents are disproportionately at risk of becoming homeless, and also survivors of domestic violence and sexual trauma. And so when you ask the question, what do they need? I think very similar to the work that you're doing at Berks Teens Matter, right? So how can we support young people to have and sustain healthy relationships? How can we support them to be more aware and be involved in their sexual health, for example? I think that a lot of the young people that we work with, unfortunately, have not had access to trusting, empathetic, consistent adults. So generally, I think across the board, that's something that young people would probably need. I don't know. I don't want to repeat myself and say that it's very similar to the work that you are all doing, but again, I very much believe in this is all we're all entangled, we're all enmeshed, and all of these, the roots of all of these social problems are just so similar, and we all need the same thing.
Systemic.
Yeah, we need, affordable housing. We need to talk about the fact that disproportionately Black and Brown children are represented in the Child Protective Services, for example, right? We work with a lot of young people that are, part of the foster care system. I could go on and on with this, I think, but.
So there's a lot of entangled and complex needs that if we were perhaps a more consistently compassionate society, we might be spending a lot more of our time and resources thinking about how to ensure that people have what they need to be able to thrive.
Yeah. And one of the things too that I think in an ideal world, I would love to see more of this happening is more empathetic, helping qualified professionals, helping to mediate conversations for young people and their adults or their caregivers. So for example, when young people are being kicked out of their homes because they identify as queer, how can we help to mediate a conversation with the parents? Maybe the parents are just uninformed or don't have the wording or don't have the access to the information. And so I really truly believe that sometimes it just takes a few conversations and those human relationships with the adults in their lives as well.
And because it's a systemic issue, I think also, and because we can't just be everywhere at all times, I think it also involves more organizations collaborating more, collaborating closer, creating partnerships that, maybe I don't know how to address this situation, but I know someone who can, and I will, put you in contact with that person, and that person will be willing to participate because I think there's also a lot of bureaucracy involved, that if we just stream like that, maybe the help and the support can get to where it needs to go faster and more effectively.
Can I just mention, I know that we're getting towards the end, but I just wanted to also mention that I think that the McKinney-Vento Act is just phenomenal if we're all following it right and we're all aware, right? Because the McKinney-Vento Act really highlights the rights and protections of young people who are experiencing homelessness. And so I think that, what I want listeners to also know is that there is what's called a runaway and homeless youth liaison in every school in the county, in every school district, at least there's one. And they're responsible for identifying and recognizing and advocating on behalf of these young people that are experiencing homelessness, right? And so not only are they crucial because they identify who they are, but then they also help them to get these protections. So for example, one of these protections is young people who want to enroll in school who are experiencing homelessness. They don't need all those documents that I mentioned earlier, right? They can enroll and then maybe get the supportive liaison to get those documents. But there are so many things that so many protections that they have under this federal act that if more of us, were aware of the definition, we would, one, be able to identify more of these young people and help them get the rights and the protections that they need and that they deserve.
Did I just hear you say that like every school district across the country has at least one of those people?
What do they call them? Like local educational agencies, like LEAs. So I think that typically, it's my understanding that that's typically every school district every school district should have one.
Okay.
And I'm saying at least one because I know in like Reading School District, for example, I think there's one in every building. I think there's a liaison in every building, or at least one that's identified for a couple different buildings. So,
okay.
But yes, that is true.
Since you mentioned, that with the McKinney Act, they don't need, any documents. I'm gonna kind of like turn that table. But then, what are the requirements that a person may need to receive services from Family Promise of Berks County?
So, I mean, the biggest one is that they identify as experiencing homelessness, right? Which is a barrier in itself, or housing instability. That's really the requirement for UTurn and the age 17 to 24. Rent and utilities is based on income. I don't want to bore anybody with the details, but it's a certain percentage below the average median income. And for the shelter project, it's really experiencing homelessness. And then also, it's a requirement that you have goals of education and or employment coming into the program, right? Because ideally, that's how we sustain housing. And income is varied. It can be employment, but it can also be assistance. It can be disability. It can be a range of different means of income. So those are really the eligibility requirements, if you will.
And if they want to be in contact with Family Promise?
They can go to our website, but also our phone number is 373-3323. A lot of people stop by to see us, right? And I think it's important to put out all these different ways for people to contact us because, with the populations that we are working with, sometimes a phone isn't attainable or accessible. So we have a lot of folks coming to visit us during our office hours, which is really amazing. We love that. And our address is 325 North 5th Street. So
I was just going to ask that. Beat me to it.
Beat you to it.
Well, Bethany, Nadine, do you have anything else for our amazing guest?
Stop.
I have lots of things, lots more questions, but I'm going to pause because I know that we all need to get on to some other things today. And we appreciate the time that Bethany was able to be with us. And maybe there will be a Family Promise Part 2 at some point. Who knows?
Who knows?
In the meantime, we can get coffee.
Oh, absolutely.
And talk more.
That's true. That's true. We can do that. And Askable Adults is always like a surprise of what's going to appear, who's going to be here. So you never know.
There you go. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you for being here and for accepting our invitation.
Yes.
Always.
See you around.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.